Welcome to Police Academy Prep. This is Deputy Z. Today we will be going through the Law Enforcement Basic Recruit Book of the Police Academy, going into Chapter 5, Fundamentals of Patrol. This will be the short edition recorded version where I breeze through the bold and highlighted points and terms in the chapter to provide a more streamlined, full recap of the chapter. The short version is great for situations like short drives to the Academy on exam days. But be sure to watch the in-depth recording version where I read from the entire chapter and provide insight to potential test questions and real-life situations, as that version will be the one that fully prepares you for the test. Let's go ahead and jump into the material here. We got 5 units, and let's jump into Unit 1, Patrol Basics. Patrolling is the main activity that you will perform daily. Alright, that's a test question right there. The primary purposes of patrolling are to maintain a public presence, enforce laws and ordinances, and deter crime. Patrolling an assigned area also includes building a relationship with your community by developing resident and community contacts and providing information to residents. Now we have reactive and proactive patrol. Reactive patrol is about responding to or dealing with a crime after it occurs. It requires responding immediately to an incident to increase the likelihood of catching a suspect. This strategy exists in traditional policing, where you're more likely to answer calls and take reports about recurring problems in your community. Proactive patrol discourages criminal activity by having an officer regularly present in the area. To make your presence known, you must continuously travel through the patrol area and speak to people for short periods of time. Community-oriented policing. It is a concept that encourages the community to work with law enforcement and address what causes crime and other issues affecting the community. The goal of community-oriented policing is to look at issues that are typical of certain neighborhoods and to work with the community to fight these problems. Community-oriented policing has 2 main parts: community partnerships and problem solving. Community partnerships increase understanding and trust between law enforcement agencies and their communities. Community partners can include law enforcement representatives, elected officials, government representatives, and community representatives. The second part of community-oriented policing is problem solving. Community partnerships allow law enforcement agencies to develop long-term, proactive programs and ways to address problems in the community. All right, preparing to patrol. The equipment used while on patrol is vital to an officer's safety and effectiveness. You must routinely check them. Okay, at the beginning of your shift, check all of your items on your duty belt and make sure all equipment is present and functional. Roll call. Roll call is a brief operational meeting that officers attend before starting a shift. It provides information about current issues to keep in mind while on patrol, things like BOLOs, wanted persons, officer safety concerns, stolen vehicles, etc. One of the first things you will learn as a patrol officer is the layout of your assigned area, district, or jurisdiction. Your patrol area may remain the same or change daily depending upon factors related to staffing. Okay. Before going on patrol, identify the boundaries of your assigned patrol area. Become familiar with all the major roads, landmarks, and community resources so you can respond quickly. Okay. Throughout a shift, your patrol status will change. Inform dispatch about any changes to your availability and location while on duty. Know your patrol area so that you can recognize suspicious activity, bolded term, which is any activity that is abnormal for a specific time of day in a particular area. Knowledge of the law and community and good observation skills will help you determine whether any suspicious activity is a crime in progress. Okay, identify and remove dangers that can be a threat to public safety, such as removing the door of a discarded refrigerator on the street or reporting a broken streetlight. Okay, we have patrol methods. The 3 most common: motor vehicle, foot, and bicycle. Specialized patrol forms might include marine, mounted, air, all-terrain vehicle, motorcycle, and personal transporters. Remember that the area you're patrolling dictates the patrol method to use. While using a vehicle allows you to cover large areas, it can isolate you from the residents and divert your attention. Foot patrol has many advantages, such as allowing you to be visible to the public and accessible to your community. Remember that patrolling on foot during the day or during the night has different advantages. During the day, you're highly visible to your community and greater access to the environment. At night, you can use darkness to conceal your approach. Make sure to switch up your patrol patterns to keep people from predicting it. Safety is an important aspect of your job. To properly protect the public, you must also protect yourself. Officer safety should be assessed constantly. How often? Constantly. Test question. Observation is the act of recognizing an occurrence using your senses by noticing people, things, or circumstances. How can you improve your observational skills? through practice, memorizing cars, people, details of the scene. You can do it when observing others. Take note of appearance, height, weight, hair, clothing, approximate age, etc. You can focus on situations or behaviors that are important to law enforcement, including things that are unusual or usual. And do not get distracted by a few elements, but observe the entire scene before making a judgment. Then we're going to talk about cover and concealment. When you arrive at a scene, identify cover and concealment areas that can be used to observe activity. Remember that cover is anything that creates a bullet-resistant barrier. Examples are engine blocks, brick walls, dirt embankments, concrete, steel, and thick wood. Concealment is any object or group of objects that create a visual barrier to an officer, but it may not stop a projectile. Examples: shrubs, fences, interior walls, and objects that will keep you hidden from view. Also, it is preferable to use cover rather than concealment. Okay, then we get to using the senses. Sight is often what? The starting point for observation. Okay, hearing can be affected by background noises such as traffic. Smell can help you identify dangerous or illegal substances, but you should never smell anything that is an unknown substance. Touch can help you identify items during a search or identify clues during an investigation. Make sure to wear gloves when touching a crime scene. Taste is an important sense, but it should never be used to identify an unknown substance. All right, safety and survival procedures. Under the stress of a survival situation, revert to your training. Survival readiness may include tactical preparedness, such as having a plan anytime you enter a building, or firearms, situation awareness, first aid skills, etc. Mental conditioning, also known as the will to survive, is how you can practice tactical preparedness to respond quickly and safely to a situation. By studying, mentally rehearsing, and regularly practicing safety procedures, you can be prepared for difficult situations. The circumstances of a situation will dictate the tactics you use. Always be alert and use your observation skills to identify potential dangers. Here we got some good basic tips. Know situational awareness is the ability to pay attention to what is going on around you. It requires staying aware of your environment. Avoid tunnel vision, also referred to as funnel vision, which is the narrowing of the field of view during a stressful event such as a vehicle pursuit, foot chase, or armed confrontation. How you avoid tunnel vision: scan your surroundings, practice controlled breathing, and task relevant self-talk. All right, factors that compromise officer safety. Let's see here. Basically telling you to check all your equipment, make sure it's all good. When interacting with someone, pay attention to nonverbal cues. Your ability to observe danger and signs of criminal activity is another important part of patrolling. Never assume that a call is routine. Every call is different. You must be prepared to react properly to each situation. Okay, electronic communications. Let's see here. All computer activity is recorded per the FBI security policy and is subject to review under public records law. The radio is the most common communication device that officers use. Use the radio to send, receive vital information from dispatch, other officers, backup, identify a suspect or want a person, etc. You have 3 types of radio communications. You have your dispatch console or base station. You have your vehicle-mounted radio or your portable or handheld radio. Communications personnel. So know that public safety telecommunicators, PSTs, are also known as dispatchers. Dispatchers transmit calls, receive calls for assistance from officers, broadcast information about wanted and missing persons, check records, and perform many other tasks. Know that dispatchers are generally non-sworn personnel. Let's see here. Just know that dispatch can dispatch law enforcement, fire rescue, EMS, other public safety services, and real-time information from FCIC and NCIC. Make sure you're a professional on the radio. Here are some things you can relay over the radio. Law enforcement-related messages to other agencies, driver license status and driver history, calls for service, criminal records check, hazard material queries, vehicle, boat, and aircraft registration queries, road and weather conditions. Radio protocol describes the customs and regulations for constructing and transmitting radio messages. It also includes the proper use of codes and signals, which may be different among agencies and regions. Here are the 4 basic radio codes. You have signals. Communication is a system that uses the word signal before numbers. For example, signal 0 means an armed person. The phonetic alphabet system uses the letters of the English alphabet to identify letters in voice communication. For example, A Alpha, B Bravo, C Charlie. The numeric or 10 code system uses the number 10 before any numbers that represent specific activities. For example, 1015 often means prisoner in custody. The alphanumeric code system combines letters and numbers that may include officer call signs or vehicle license plates. So, for example, Alpha Bravo Charlie 123. Let's see here. Make sure there's no radio traffic when making a voice transmission. Know that in stressful situations your voice may fluctuate. Okay, here we go. Receiving and answering calls. Stay aware of all radio transmission in case another officer is in trouble. When you receive a call from dispatch, respond with your assigned identification and current location. Some things to provide when you're doing an officer-initiated transmission: your ID and location, type of situation, type of assistance needed, a description of involved peoples or groups, and a description of the vehicle. Querying. This is the process of gathering information by entering or running a search in a database for law enforcement purposes. It is sometimes called a vehicle check, records check, or once and warrants check. Know what FCIC and NCIC are. FCIC stands for the Florida Crime Information Center. It is a database housed at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. It provides information on people and property, driver's license, wanted or missing persons, stolen guns or other stolen things, people's status, and concealed weapons license. FCIC is the National Crime Information Center. It is a national database maintained by the FBI, and it contains records of stolen, abandoned, and recovered property and wanted and missing persons. It also includes the National Sex Offender Registry. So if they ask who has a National Sex Offender Registry, obviously it's not just Florida. It's the National Crime Information Database. Okay. FCIC sources. FCIC contains the criminal histories of people who have been arrested in Florida only. When a person is arrested, all that information gets sent to FDLE. FDLE then reviews the information and the fingerprints and creates a computerized criminal history, CCH, computerized criminal history of that person. Only law enforcement agencies that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, can enter data about stolen property and wanted and missing persons in FCIC, NCIC. Let's see. Know what CGIS is, the Criminal Justice Information Services, and you have to complete one of their certification training courses in order to get access to FCIC, NCIC. You must also agree to a state national fingerprint-based background check within 30 days of starting your job through an FCIC terminal. Know that all information contained in criminal justice databases are strictly for law enforcement use only. Remember that FCIC, NCIC logs all users' transactions and movements within, and they can be used in criminal investigations, suspected system misuse, etc. Alright, here we go. Using the FCIC, NCIC system, you can search for persons, stolen properties, firearms, vehicles. Make sure to provide all that information necessary for those. An exact match in a database is called a hit. Know that for the test. Make sure you double confirm that that hit is accurate and for that right person. Know what the DHSMV is. That is the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. Again, DHSMV is the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. Know what DAVID is. DAVID is the Driver and Vehicle Information Database. So DAVID is housed inside DHSMV. The DHSMV maintains the online search database known as DAVID. You can also request the driver be reassessed for a driver's license or a medical review through DAVID. Improper management of criminal databases and information is a misuse of your position. Know what the Criminal Justice Network is. That stands for CJNet. You can use that to access many other valuable information databases. These below sites I'm about to mention are part of the CJNet. So these are all a part of the CJNet, the Criminal Justice System Network. So that includes Insight, which is a statewide crime intelligence database, Falcon, which is Florida's integrated criminal history system, and CART, which is Child Abduction Response Team, and the Florida Sexual Offender and Predator Database. Okay, now we're going to move to responding to a call. Determine the safest response to the scene that will protect you, other officers, and the public. Collect as much information as possible about the call. While on your way, consider the safest arrival point and possible threat to the incident. Plan how you will drive to the scene. Now, arriving at the scene of a call. Once you have arrived, stop a short distance from the address. If other units are responding, you and other officers should coordinate the direction from which you all arrive. Check for obvious clues, such as a vehicle parked in a lot that is not normally parked there, or absence of one that should be parked there. Okay, know officer safety when approaching a scene. Find a best tactical position. Approach suspicious vehicles on foot. Fill the hood of a vehicle for heat. Walking in low crouching position can help. Using a flashlight, make sure it's away from your body and your support non-dominant hand. Call for backup if needed. Now it's gathering information from complainants, victims, and witnesses. Identify everyone involved. Determine the type of complaints or incidents. When interviewing anybody, make sure you ask for ID, personal information, names, phone numbers, addresses, etc. Be professional yet personal. Separate everyone and ask each person to describe what happened. Take detailed notes. Make sure you know what a bolo is. Be on the lookout. It gives a description of the subject, subject's name, any different additional information. Know that there is no standard format or content on how to put out a bolo. Know some of the things that will be in a bolo. Location, the reason for the bolo, subject's name and identifying information, the reason why you're putting it out, description, etc. Bolos are also used for amber alerts, silver alerts, blue alerts, and purple alerts. Follow agency policies and procedures when initiating a bolo. Approaching a subject. When developing a plan for contacting a suspect, decide if you should contact the suspect right away or wait for backup. When approaching a suspect, consider their criminal history, behavior, and possible weapons. Always watch the person's hand and body language when talking with them. The primary officer on the call is the contact officer. This officer is responsible for leading the approach and handling all communication with the suspect, including commands and interviews. The backup officer is the cover officer and is strictly responsible for officer safety concerns at the scene. So, crowds, traffic, escape routes, etc. Alright, here we go. Let's see here. Continue to seek information about interviewing and observing the suspect. Share all information with backup officers. Resisting an officer without violence occurs when a person non-violently resists, obstructs, or opposes a law enforcement officer while they are performing their legal duties. An example is not obeying verbal commands, refusing to be handcuffed, or refusing to provide ID. Resisting an officer with violence occurs when a person knowingly resists or obstructs a law enforcement officer by committing or offering to commit a violent act towards a law enforcement officer while the officer is performing legal duties. An example of that is just fighting with them. Be aware of people providing false names and information to you. Know that you can use David, FCIC, NCIC, portable fingerprint scanner, etc. to find the real identity. Responding as backup. Non-life-threatening situations can range from assisting with admin paperwork to providing additional equipment. High-risk situations may include assisting with serving a warrant, responding to a vehicle pursuit, or responding to a scene where the suspect is still present. Life-threatening situations may include dealing with an active shooter or vehicle crash with serious injuries. Upon arrival, survey the scene and maintain situational awareness. Okay, now BTAM. Okay, targeted violence refers to incidents of violence involving an identifiable person of concern, a perpetrator, who possesses the intent and capability to cause physical harm to an identifiable target, an intended victim. These incidents are goal-directed, premeditated, and predatory. Know those terms. And they may occur in or across many locations, including home, workplace, schools, government offices, incidents, hospitals, places of worship, etc. Practical research conducted by the U.S. Secret Service, SBI, and other government entities have revealed some key findings. Human behavior cannot be reliably predicted, but it may be prevented. No psychological or demographic profile exists for an active shooter or perpetrator. So profiling is not an effective tool. Targeted violence is almost never impulsive or random. It is a result of organized thinking and behavior such as planning and preparation. Mental health issues are rarely the main cause. And while communicated threats should never be ignored, persons of concern for targeted violence often do not communicate threats to law enforcement in advance. Okay, know what BTAM is. That is Behavioral Threat Assessment and Management. BTAM. It is a proactive investigative process used to identify, assess, and manage the risk of targeted violence posed by an identified or identifiable person. BTAM uses law enforcement intelligence cycle to collect and analyze behavioral information. Know the term pathway to violence. Okay. The primary goal of BTAM is to prevent or mitigate acts of targeted violence, especially incidents of mass targeted violence. And its primary functions are to identify, assess, and manage people of concern within the local community. Okay, so identify. On patrol, you will respond to a variety of calls for service where you may see or hear something that leads you to identify a person of concern for future target violence. Assess. The core of BTAM is to assess a person's risk for future targeted violence against an identifiable target. Manage. In BTAM, law enforcement agencies manage a person of concern using strategies based on the assessment to prevent or mitigate acts of targeted violence. Okay, here we go. Okay, responding to non-criminal calls for service. Okay, be professional, provide resources. You can direct people to assist. The Florida law authorizes officers to command assistance from the public in certain situations. Okay, well-being checks. Let's see. Just know that you have to, look for things that are abnormal, out of the ordinary, flies, smells, lack of activity such as mail building up, etc. If you can't make contact, then document what you did. Security checks. While patrolling an assigned area, you may conduct security checks of residents, buildings, or grounds. Okay, let's see. Death notifications. Notifying the next of kin. You may be assigned to make a death notification. Most likely you're not going to, but make sure you verify that that person is the person you are contacting. Know what ECI is. That is the emergency contact information under David. Be sensitive to cultural and religious issues when handling this emotional type of situation. If the next of kin lives in another state or town, contact the local law enforcement agency to make the notification for you. Animal complaints. An exotic animal is any animal that is not native to Florida, such as pythons, parrots, and monitor lizards. Make sure you identify any threats or injuries, provide first aid, call EMS, etc. You may need to contact FWC, that is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Okay, fire-related incidents. The role of the law enforcement officer with fire. Okay, notify dispatch immediately, request assistance. Evacuate anyone if necessary, contact the supervisor if necessary. The primary responsibility of an officer after the arrival of fire department personnel is to assist the firefighters and the fire marshal in their investigation and to maintain crowd and traffic control. A false alarm of a fire occurs when an alarm system is activated but no evidence of reasonable threat exists. The false alarm could be intentional or malfunction. If it is determined that someone pulled it intentionally without a reason, without reasonable cause, it is a criminal offense. Okay, lost, stolen, or recovered property. Basically, if you have lost property, get the identifying information and write a report on it. Stolen property, same way as lost property, except if there is some sort of identifiable marks or serial numbers, you will enter that into FCIC, NCIC. Know the stolen property in the custody of a pawnbroker. When an appropriate law enforcement officer has probable cause to believe that property in the possession of a pawnbroker is misappropriated, the official may place a written hold order on the property. The written hold order shall impose a holding period not to exceed 90 days unless extended by court order. The appropriate law enforcement official may rescind in writing any hold order. An appropriate law enforcement official may place only one hold order on property. Okay, recovered property. If you recover it, make sure to take it out of FCIC, NCIC. Property boundary disputes. Property boundary disputes between neighbors are usually civil in nature. So, trees in the backyard, refer them to civil courts. Okay, disturbances from landlord-tenant disputes. Those are also civil in nature. Know the Florida Residential Landlord and Tenant Act that governs most of traditionally recognized rental arrangements for dwellings, apartments, townhomes, duplexes, single-family housing units, and mobile homes, etc. Make sure that the only way a landlord can legally recover possession is to get an eviction proceeding in the county court, and know that will then be a writ of possession will be granted, issued to the court, to the sheriff, who is then authorized to evict that tenant. You may only physically evict a tenant following a writ of possession. The Residential Landlord-Tenant Act does not apply in these three types of residential rental facilities: public lodging establishments such as hotels and motels, medical, geriatric, educational, counseling, religious, or similar residency facilities, and recreational vehicle parks. Now, repossession of property. The creditor can enforce. Know that a creditor is someone who's owed money, and the borrower is someone who is borrowing the money. The creditor can enforce this stipulation by obtaining a writ of replevin, which is a court order that allows the creditor to take possession of the collateral after the borrower defaults. Outside of a court order, Florida law allows one other option for repossession. A creditor may rely on self-help repossession, which is a process where the creditor takes possession of the collateral after the default without a court order and without breach of peace. When responding to a dispute or confrontation about the repossession of a vehicle, you may have to determine if the vehicle has already been attached and the driver is behind the wheel, and if there is a breach of peace. Motor vehicle repair disputes. The Florida statutes permit a vehicle owner who refuses to pay the repair bill to take possession of the vehicle after posting a bond with the clerk of the court. If they take it without paying the bond, then they should be investigated for theft. Civil disturbances. Know what an injunction is. It is a court order that requires a person to do or refrain from doing specific acts, such as having no contact with a former spouse or a specific victim of domestic violence. Civil standby. There will be times where you are called to a civil standby, which is often an officer maintaining the peace through officer presence while serving a court order or responding to a call for service. Civil standby requires little action by the officer. Your presence is enough. Intervene when necessary if a crime is going to be committed. Okay, assessing a crowd. Obviously, First Amendment rights for a peaceful assembly, but if it's not peaceful because of either disorderly intoxication, a freezing riots, unlawful assemblies, routs, melees, mobs, breach of the peace, and disorderly contact, that is not protected under the First Amendment. Make sure to act within the scope of the law. Your duty is to determine if the demonstration or gathering is lawful based on state statutes and county and municipal ordinances. Sometimes in Florida, you need permits for these events. Okay, try to determine the threat level of the crowd. Identify if the crowd is organized and if anyone is leading it. Know that these are dangerous. Have backup. Alarms and searches. Okay, responding to security alarms. Let's see. They could be false alarms. Some alarms are audible. Some are silent. Let's see. Park at a safe distance away. Try to identify the cause of the alarm. Secure the scene if no suspects are present. If they are present, do you need a perimeter? Do you need canine, etc.? Alright, building search principles. Okay, the greatest threat in a building search is the possibility of a suspect in hiding. That is a test question. Before entering a building, request an emergency radio channel through dispatch and draw your firearm. Know what fatal funnels are. They are also referred to as, hold on. As you move through a building, remain aware of fatal funnels. There are narrow spaces that restrict movement. These spaces are typically doorways, hallways, and windows. You should also be aware of deep corners that cannot be visibly cleared from the doorway and must be checked first upon entry. Okay, when you do enter, there are two common methods for entering a room. You got the crisscross and the button hook technique. In the crisscross technique, officers start on opposite sides and they enter rapidly one after another, crossing. In the button hook, also called the wraparound, an officer and a partner enter the room by hooking around the corner at the point of entry. Okay, when searching, clear rooms for immediate threats, etc. A perimeter is an area of containment surrounding the site of an incident. The size and scope of the perimeter depends upon the nature of the incident. Okay, ground searches. Okay, fleeing suspect on foot. Let's see here. Okay, if you lose the sight of the suspect while chasing somebody on foot, be aware of the possibility of an ambush. Know that you can call it off at any point if you need to. Be aware of the physiological effects of stress and fatigue during a foot pursuit. These effects include selective hearing, tunnel vision, and rapid breathing. Deciding whether to pursue with a drawn firearm depends on the circumstances. Okay, no steps for making a physical custody arrest. Know how to escort the arrestee to the patrol vehicle. Obviously, always maintaining physical control. Preparation for transport. Notifying dispatch. Specific transport situations. You cannot transport a juvenile in the same vehicle with an adult unless they are co-defendants. Notify dispatch when you are transporting or if you need EMS. You'll need backup at that point. If an arrestee has a disability or specific need, make sure that it does not compromise officer safety if you are doing something different, whether they have a wheelchair or whatnot. When transporting a pregnant arrestee, you may want to place restraints in the front of the arrestee. And let's see here. If they're under the influence, then keep medical personnel aware. Okay, en route. Let's see here. If something goes on while en route to the jail, possible issues can be the arrest, if they're combative, medical issues, traffic crash, life-threatening event, or if they escape. Incarcerated pregnant person. Know the Health Pregnancy for Incarcerated Woman Act. You must not use restraints for an incarcerated pregnant person who isn't only in labor, delivery, or postpartum. Not if they're 3 months pregnant, 6 months pregnant, 8 months present. Arrival. Notify dispatch. Ending mileage. Juvenile arrest, you're going to take them to the jack, but if you do need to take them to the main jail, they have a special place out of sight, out of hearing of adults. Okay, booking. Let's see here. Completing the arrest process. And that completes the Chapter 5 short edition version. I kept that just around 30 minutes for you guys. If you have not listened to the long, in-depth version, please do so. It is very informative. It is way more in-depth than this one. This one is strictly on the way to the academy for your test day. You need a quick review, or maybe you're short on time. This is the review for you. Make sure you guys are listening to the in-depth version as well. Catch you guys in the next video. Deputy Z signing off.